Hey, everybody, and welcome to this week's Skewedcast for Skewed and Reviewed. I'm Gareth, creator of Skewed and Reviewed. You can catch us online at sknr.net. We have our quarterly magazine, next issue due out in June. That's available from Barnes & Noble and other retailers, Magster, MagCloud, so on. And, of course, we also do the weekly segment on BJ Shea's Geek Nation on KISW-FM radio. I simulcast the segment on our site each week. And finally, we have 8 newspapers in the Pinal Central network of papers. Just look us up at pinalcentral.com, keyword skewed. We do film and game reviews, television, pop culture, travel, entertainment, and hardware gear, so much more. This week, we have Michael out. Unfortunately, he had one of his beloved cats pass away on him unexpectedly this morning. He's also on call for his regular duties, so it was just a lot going on for him this week, so he's taking the time off, but Justin is here as always, and we've got a lot of great stuff for you. Just wanted to do a quick note. My wife and I will be on vacation next week, and so we're still planning on having a show for you next Sunday, even though we'll be on a cruise ship sailing in British Columbia. So what we are planning to do is a special segment on Phoenix Fan Fusion and some other things that we'll record before we go and schedule it. So check back next Sunday and we'll have that. Now, before we get to the discussions, I wanted to mention a couple pieces of news. The first off is a brand new hard drive from Western Digital. It is an SSD drive, the WD Black series, and it is 1 terabyte of memory. Now, this is designed to be, I'll hold it up right there so you guys can get a decent look at it. And it is designed to be perfect for desktop applications as well as gaming. It takes up less space in your computer. It's faster. And of course, the great thing about it is that it is more durable than conventional hard drives. So if you're looking to make the switch to an SSD and you're saying, you know, with the new games coming out, I can use more space, I can use less space taken up in my hard drive, and of course something that I can put in and not have to worry about as much, that's definitely one you're going to want to check out. And the reason for that is there's a lot of very high quality things coming out that take up a lot of space. Now, one such, we can't do a review on it yet, but it is coming out this week, and that is Rage 2. So if you're going to be playing it on PC, having a lot of storage for not only the game, but for future updates that are planned. They talked about the roadmap that's coming. Games like Fallout 76 have a lot of updates to them. We heard some rumors, again, that they've apparently put job boards up for Red Dead Redemption to come to PC. These are all games that take up a lot of space, as well as some of the stuff down the line. You probably are going to see Modern Warfare 4 later this year. And when we're at E3, obviously, we're going to see a lot of stuff. So, of course, always keep in mind, make sure you have the video card for it, make sure you have the RAM and the CPU, but above all, make sure you have the storage. Now, Justin, we had a new game announced this week from the folks at Ubisoft. What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, we got an announcement of a sequel to Ghost Recon. What was the last one called? Wildlands. That's right. This one is called Ghost Recon Breakpoint. So it is a direct sequel to Wildlands. And I was a pretty big fan of Wildlands. I thought it was a very good evolution of the franchise. It was a very well done open world game that had a lot of options. And it did feel a little inspired by kind of the approach of Metal Gear Solid 5, which is definitely not a bad thing. I absolutely love Metal Gear Solid 5. And I think they did a pretty good job sort of adapting some of the good ideas from that game, where you could approach any particular base in almost an unlimited number of ways, from the sky, from the water, from land. So it was great. This game, it seems to be taking place. Wildlands took place in Colombia.
No, it was. You're close. Peru.
Peru. That's right.
Peru, right.
So it took place in a very real place. Breakpoint seems to be taking place in a fictional Pacific island, which I think that's actually a pretty good idea. Allows them to kind of flex their muscles a little bit creatively. And it seems like you won't be going up against the same kind of threats you were in Wildlands, whereas Wildlands you were up against a drug cartel. It seems now you're up against a much more advanced threat. So I am looking forward to it. And they've done a pretty good job lately of expanding their open worlds and making them a lot more engaging. So I think that this is definitely going to be one of the games to watch later this year.
Yeah, and what is really interesting about it is I went back into Wildlands, and they've released some interesting new episodes, free DLC, free content updates, so on and so forth. And if you have not had a chance to go in and play Wildlands recently, I recommend you do that, because I went in and there were like all these new missions, and it was rather interesting. After doing all this time playing the Division 2, it was kind of fun to pop in and, kind of use that looter shooter duck and cover approach, and that was great. And of course, having the helicopter certainly didn't hurt. I was amazing how quickly my helicopter crashing skills came back to me. And I'm curious to see if we'll get something creative. Like, remember, we had the limited time DLC where we could go take on the Predator and stuff like that. And from what I understand with Breakpoint, which again I'm hoping we'll learn more about at E3, I would expect we will during their showcase, is that apparently you're on the defensive from the beginning. One of the great things about Wildlands is that you had literally, you were the Ghost. You could come in under the cover of night. You could, hit and run, do all sorts of guerrilla warfare tactics, that sort of thing. And this time out, apparently you were on the run from the get-go. So I'm really curious to see how that'll work when you are not able to set up and strategize, especially with your multiplayer saying, you fly the helicopter in, you take the truck in, you pull out here and use a machine gun, and then I'll send a drone in, where, you're literally having to run for your life all the time. I think that's going to be a really interesting thing, and I'm looking forward to seeing how that plays out. Now, another thing to mention is Michael got to see the Terminator Dark Fate trailer when he was covering CinemaCon, or I should say the footage for it. And director Tim Miller has said that we will be seeing the full trailer in the next coming weeks, which is some great news. But Justin, we got the upfronts this week, and this is when all the TV shows will be making the announcement as to what their official lineup is, what the official new shows are, that sort of thing. And we had essentially what they refer to as Black Friday, when the shows that won't be returning are announced, and Fox had announced Lethal Weapon won't be back, which isn't really a surprise, considering Damon Wayans had said that he was planning on not coming back. But people are thrilled that ABC has renewed The Rookie and Fox has renewed The Orville. So what did you take from that? And were there any shows that you heard that were canceled or renewed that surprised you?
It doesn't surprise me a ton. The Orville, it does seem to be getting more popular as it goes on. I haven't watched it myself yet, but I have heard pretty good things about it. And this is it's kind of interesting that both shows, this and Star Trek Discovery, kind of came out at the same time, and they're both ostensibly Star Trek shows. But honestly, from a lot of the fans that I've talked to who have watched both shows, quite a few of them actually prefer the Orville over Star Trek Discovery. I'm in
that boat. Yeah.
Yeah. There's a lot of people that, are huge Star Trek fans and feel that the Orville kind of captures the feeling of Star Trek a little bit better. So I think it is very good news that it is back. As far as other surprises, I don't know about surprises per se, but I do have a few shows that I'm definitely very excited about. I'm very excited to see the continuation of, obviously, Stranger Things is coming back in July. Yes. They also recently announced that this year we will be getting another season of Mindhunter, which is another great Netflix show. Very hard to watch, but definitely a fascinating show about the rise of the group within the FBI that studies serial killers and investigates serial killers. So I'm definitely looking forward to those two shows very much. As far as cancellations, like you said, Lethal Weapon not coming back, not a huge surprise. I actually did hear a few good things about the way that show started, but I didn't really hear much about it after that. Other than that, a lot of the shows that I see in the list that were not renewed, a lot of shows that honestly, sadly, haven't really heard about. So overall, I think it was, it all sort of makes sense. I guess one more to plug. There's going to be another season of The Terror. That was another show that came out last year or the year before.
Last year, yeah.
On AMC that I liked it quite a bit, and I'm very much a fan of the direction they're going. They're kind of going to treat it as an anthology, a sort of horror anthology show set in sort of historical settings. So I'm definitely looking forward to that as well.
Yeah, it'll be interesting because George Takei is going to be at Phoenix Fan Fusion in a couple weeks, and he will be in the new season. And it is very interesting because it's set in a Japanese internment camp during World War II, and apparently it has to deal with some supernatural elements. And for those that have followed his story, when he was a young boy, he and his family were in an internment camp. So it'll be very interesting to see how this plays out. They've got Nosferatu coming in June. I saw the pilot episode at WonderCon and was really intrigued by that. I'm looking forward to it. And of course, I don't know if you saw, but earlier today, apparently Dark Horse and Netflix, on the strength of the Umbrella Academy, have kind of worked out a first look deal where they haven't announced any titles yet, but they're looking over some of the Dark Horse titles to see if there's potential series in them. So interesting stuff. Now, getting back to the Orville, you mentioned that it's been very popular, and with Star Trek fans, and one of the reasons for it is that a lot of the producers and writers who worked on various Star Trek shows from the Next Generation onward are involved with it. And you've also had Jonathan Frakes come on and direct some episodes. He's also directed some on Discovery, and you've had some of the Star Trek actors come on and do guest appearances on the show, which has really helped. Seth MacFarlane's a huge fan. And there's just been some really interesting news bits about it. Like, for example, one of the rumors I heard was that it was actually renewed back in December. And part of it was that they've been given a $15 million tax credit to continue production, which is $15 million and change, which is a really good thing. However, apparently, now mind you, this is all speculation and it's based on some tweets from some people behind the scenes of the show. Like, literally the other day, they showed the offices were empty and they were, saying they're ready to get back to work and so on and so forth. Apparently, one of the things, and this is going to be really interesting to see how this plays out, is Seth MacFarlane's contract is up in June. And apparently, we've heard that Netflix, Amazon, several other people are lining up to get their hooks into him. And the rumor is that one of the delays was that he basically said, the Orville is my priority, and if you want to keep my services, you got to keep this show. And one of the things they were waiting on is because they knew that Fox was about to be acquired by Disney. He wanted to make sure, apparently he has a kind of a deal where they have kind of a hands-off approach on the show, and that he's allowed to do things his way. And I guess he was very concerned about having people come in and do the corporate overlord thing where they were, we got to have a new love interest and we got to have more action and you got to have some sex in the show and you got to have more. And he didn't want that. He wanted to be able to do that. So, what we heard is had a deal not been reached, he could have walked away and taken those shows with him. And so, my whole thing was, well, what happens if they renew the Orville, they have Family Guy renewed, American Dad's renewed on TBS, what happens if they don't reach a deal? Is it basically they finish out the year and then they move on? But who knows? It's very interesting, and the fact that it's coming back is really good. I'm thrilled that The Rookie is coming back. I think that was definitely one of the best of the new shows out there, and I really recommend people check that out. I know a lot of people are shocked that The Gifted and The Passage are not back, and they're kind of sad about that. But of course, with Netflix giving things a second chance, we already have seen Lucifer return. We're going to have Designated Survivor coming back, and I think June it comes back. So really, really interesting times ahead. I'm curious to see what the announcements will be. Let's not forget we have Lost in Space 2 coming, and lots of season 2, I should say, coming. And you already mentioned Stranger Things, so very, very interesting. Now, the last topic I wanted to address today is a pretty long one, and this has to do with Disney and Fox's lineup. The other day, you and I had speculated that we apparently might not see anything until San Diego Comic-Con, D23 Expo in August, that sort of thing. But apparently, apparently Disney came out and had a very long release where they basically outlined what's coming with Marvel, what's coming with Star Wars, a lot of the Fox properties that they acquired. They talked about date changes such as Avatar 2 not coming in December 2020, being pushed back to 2021. Artemis Fowl moving from this year to 2020. The New Mutants moving again. Certain things like the Gambit movie being canceled. We heard the announcement of the new Star Wars films, and of course, new Marvel films as yet untitled, new Pixar films as yet untitled. So, Justin, what did you take from all of this?
Yeah, so I like we talked about before, we knew that a lot of shuffling was going to happen after the merger took place, and this is just kind of the start of that. And I think the biggest surprise that comes out of it is the fact that they've pushed back the Avatar movies again. Mm-hmm. James Cameron has been working on these movies for years now. I'm not exactly sure how long, but
I understand they finished principal photography on 3 was the rumor I heard.
Yeah, which, on one hand, it does make sense because he's trying to basically do 3 movies back to back, do all of their filming all at once, and then do all of their editing pretty much.
And then do the other one at a later date because he has 4 movies planned.
Right. So it goes with that. It goes without saying that it's going to take a while. But this isn't the first time that the Avatar movies have been delayed, and we really haven't heard anything about them. It's going to be an interesting question because, Avatar was such a huge success when it came out, and that was 10 years ago. Mm-hmm. The thing, though, is that you don't really hear a lot of people talk about Avatar anymore. No. So it will be interesting to kind of go back to that world and see what James Cameron has come up with. But the staying power of Avatar is... it's definitely been overshadowed by other things, the MCU, mm-hmm. Even just other studios as comic book movies have kind of overshadowed, the staying power of Avatar. And it'll be kind of interesting to see how that goes.
It's funny you mentioned that. Before we move on, I think we should definitely explore that a bit more. When we were at the John Wick screening the other night, I heard a couple critics behind us talking, and this was right in the evening after this news had been announced that morning. And one guy was saying, if Cameron expects Avatar 2 to do the business, and Disney as well, that the first one did, they're sadly deluding themselves. And I paused for a second and I said, might be the case, but I said, would you bet against James Cameron? They told him the same thing. I remember the trade industry saying, you're absolutely stupid. It's putting that much money into a movie about a boat that we all know is going to sink and most of the people are going to die. No one's going to want to see this. The story's been done multiple times before. And I said, you think about it. He's sitting here now, and I'm sure this was not done without his approval. And they essentially probably went to him and said, gee, James, now you get another year to work on your new 3D techniques and another year of post-production. And would anyone be surprised if he does what he did the first time out and brings a new standard of visual and 3D to the theaters?
Yeah, I agree. I would not bet against James Cameron. I'm more intrigued to see what the approach is going to be to try to get us interested in this world again. I believe in James Cameron. I mean, a lot of his older movies are some of my favorite movies ever made. So I think he'll definitely pull it off. Mm-hmm. It's going to be interesting because the movie landscape has definitely changed since Avatar. And
I want to throw a curveball at you before we get to it, the rest of them, because this will definitely do that. I agree with what you're saying. I know someone even said by the time they get around to the sequel, it'll almost be time to do a remake of the original. That being said, the world of Avatar at Disney, as Disney's Animal Kingdom, is absolutely packing people in, and apparently they have no issues with that. And by the same token, we've got Star Wars Galaxy's Edge just now starting the cast and celebrity previews. It's going to open in a couple weeks. I'm sure Disney knows this is probably going to springboard Rise of Skywalker to a big opening because it's going to just fire up the demand for Star Wars. Maybe they know something we don't because they're saying, hey, Avatar merchandise is selling. People are packing this land. I think they're going to be ready for a new movie whenever we give it to them. So
yeah.
Interesting, though. So let's let's look down over this, and because there's definitely some stuff I wanted to get your expert advice on. We looked at 2019, and so we've already had Token come out, which was under Fox Studios. We've got Aladdin coming out soon. We got Dark Phoenix coming, Toy Story 4, Stuber, Lion King, stuff we've known. The Art of Racing in the Rain, Fox, Ready or Not, Ad Astra, again, Fox movies we've all known about. Woman in the Window. But in December, we get the Maleficent sequel, Ford versus Ferrari in November, Frozen 2 in November, and of course, Star Wars Rise of Skywalker, and then Fox Spies in Disguise. Again, all films we knew about. Now, here's where it gets really interesting. When we get to 2020, we have Fox's Underwaters, Fox's Untitled Kingsman movie. A lot of people think that's going to be the prequel. Call of the Wild, Disney's Onward, which we've had announced before, Disney's live-action Mulan. The New Mutants, again, is scheduled for April of 2020. Now, Untitled Marvel film, 5/1/20. So this will be the first of the Phase 4 of the Marvel films. Artemis Fowl, which was coming this year. Untitled Pixar movie, 2020. Fox's Free Guy. And then, interesting enough, Bob's Burger in 2020. And Disney's Jungle Cruise, which we knew had been moved from this year to then. Fox's One and Only Ivan, Death on the Nile, we've known about that. 11/16, Disney's Untitled Marvel, so they're going to have 2 films in 2020. And then you go on to various things like Disney's Untitled Animation, West Side Story, that was a Steven Spielberg production that's been moved from this year to next year, and Disney's Cruella. And of course, as we get into 2021, it's mostly untitled at this point. It's like Untitled Marvel, Indiana Jones film, that sort of thing. And then, of course, Avatar 2. And that's kind of the way it spins out, with the first of the new Star Wars films due in 2022, according to this. Now, we've heard rumors that this is not going to be the Rian Johnson series. There are rumors going around that that's been canned. This could be the new films from the Game of Thrones producers. So let's play devil's advocate here. I had a lot of people say to me, how come there are no Alien films on here? Disney had said at CinemaCon they were committed to the Fox franchises, even showing footage from Covenant. My take on it was, right, all I'm seeing here are films that were already announced. I don't see any Fox movies on this list that we didn't already know were in production. I have not yet to see one here that we didn't know about. And pretty much the same thing with the Disney lineup, with the exception of, we knew there were going to be new Marvel films. We knew there were going to be new Star Wars films. All we did was get a rough date on them now. What's your take on what they didn't announce?
Yeah, I think you're definitely right, especially because if you look at later in the timeline here, it's all just untitled, Disney movies. Pretty much exactly what you said. The only Fox movies, like later in this timeline, we have a couple in 2021. There's none in 2022. Exactly. And then there's Avatar 3 in 2023. People need to keep in mind.
Nothing in 2024 either.
Right. People need to keep in mind that they don't project out all of their projects this far in advance, all of them. There's definitely enough time if they to both pitch, greenlight, and start production and get a movie out in this timeline. In the next couple years. Mm-hmm. I think what this really is more indicative of is exactly what you said. This is all of the stuff that was already in production or already greenlit and already, has passed the muster of Disney scrutiny. There's way more Disney titles on this for obvious reasons that Disney, effectively we're seeing what was in the pipeline at Fox when Fox was purchased by Disney. Mm-hmm. Disney is obviously going to have a lot more on this list because they had the assets in order to put these projects in place way in advance. So my guess is that if this changes, if we see more movies get greenlit and put in this list, it's mostly going to be from the Fox side of the franchises. And I certainly expect that this is going to change, especially because if you look at later in the timeline, you start to see a sort of a dwindling of the amount of movies, I don't think anybody is expecting there to only be one movie from Disney/Fox in 2024. This is just that far in advance. They have one project already greenlit, but there's certainly going to be more from both Disney and Fox between now and 2024. So this isn't the end for all these Fox franchises. This isn't just what is we're ever going to get from Fox. My guess is that right now, with a clean slate, after they get all of these projects going, they're probably going to greenlight a whole bunch more for the timetables of probably 2021 through 2027.
Yeah, and and here's the thing: people just keep forgetting. Disney has already trimmed, I think, 3 or 4 titles off the Fox production list, from stuff they acquired, and they just said, yeah, we're not going to go forward with these. They have, of course, we know that they're in discussion to try to get the remaining 30% of Hulu, and that's going to be their outlet for some of the more mature content. We know Disney Plus is coming in November. We've already discussed quite a bit about the Star Wars and Marvel shows that are on there. And I keep coming back to the conventions. You got San Diego Comic-Con in July. We do not know what their presence is going to be. A lot of people have said, well, since they've got the D23 Expo in August, which is a biannual convention, they're not going to be as active. But then I've had people say, no, Marvel apparently is going to be doing a showcase at San Diego Comic-Con. May not see as much Disney stuff, which they'll save for their main platform. At the same time, they got to have announcements. And, one of the main things at the D23 Expo is that they do a showcase and they bring out all these celebrities, and it's what they've got planned in the next couple of years. And this covers Lucasfilm, Marvel, it covers Disney, which of course is animation and live action, and it covers Pixar. I'm guessing now they'll probably have a segment to say, okay, now we're going to put Fox into the mix as well. Part of it is to make announcements of films we don't know about. There were several things mentioned at the last couple of D23 Expo, all of them actually, that we had not even heard about. I mean, that's where they come out and said, boom, we're doing Cars 3. Boom, we're doing the Jungle Book movie. Here's The Rock. And, these were, I say Jungle Book, excuse me, the Jungle Cruise. Point is, they're holding something back because they've got to have something to drop at their expo. And it would be amazing. I mean, God, can you imagine what would happen if they said, here's Neil Blomkamp, here's Sigourney Weaver, guess what they're going to announce? I mean, you tell me that wouldn't make headline news right there.
Yeah.
So anything's possible. It's just a lot of great stuff to look forward to. And in fact, I'm hoping to have an announcement on that when I get back, because Disney has started doing D23 at sea, which is something they do on their cruise ships. Now, the last time I saw it, it was with one of the inaugural, it was actually the inaugural one they did, and one of our Disney reps was actually on the cruise doing it. And it was pretty cool. They showed a bunch of trailers from upcoming films. Now, of course, with what we do, we knew all about that. But then they showed some behind-the-scenes things that were coming at the parks. One of the things they showed was the massive updates that was coming to Disneyland Tokyo, including a new hotel, the Beauty and the Beast attraction, the stuff on Tangled. So I'm hoping that they'll have some more stuff on that. I will be very curious to see if we start getting a lot of pitch about, hey, don't forget Disney Plus is coming, so on and so forth. So I'm hoping to have some information on that when I get back in a little over a week's time. So lots of stuff there. Well, Justin, I think we covered a lot of great stuff tonight. And anything else you wanted to add before we sign off for this week?
Nope, that just about covers it.
All right. Well, make sure you folks tune in next week. We'll have our Phoenix Fan Fusion and some other news for you. Until that time, have an extremely safe week, and we will talk to you soon. Have a good one. Bye-bye now.